Swaying gently amidst the ocean's moderate undulations, a 20-meter inflatable vessel navigated the waters south of the Mercury Islands, just off New Zealand's Coromandel Peninsula. It was the afternoon of January 25, 2003. For over an hour, Sav Seville, an avid avian observer guiding a pelagic expedition from Whitianga, had intently watched a flock of white-faced storm petrels. Roughly 150 of these small brown and white birds were busily foraging in the slick behind the boat, their tiny forms appearing to dance upon the waves, much like aquatic insects gliding across a calm surface. Then, from the north, an unfamiliar bird emerged. Seville instantly noted its distinctive features: an entirely dark upper body, a bright white rump, and a long pair of legs trailing behind. He called out the sighting. Brent Stevenson, a biologist aboard the trip, swiftly trained his lens on the bird just as it banked, revealing a prominent flash of white on its belly. He managed 5 quick photographs before the creature disappeared. The existence of this particular avian marvel defied all contemporary scientific understanding. The last recorded specimen of its kind had been presented to the Natural History Museum in London by a man named G.C. Street in 1895. Prior to that, in 1827, 2 others had been collected off East Cape by French naturalists sailing with Jules Dumont d'Urville on the corvette Astrolabe. Across the globe, merely 3 preserved specimens lay within distant museum archives. For over a century, no further trace emerged. No new sightings, no additional specimens, not even a single feather. For 108 years, the New Zealand storm petrel was unequivocally consigned to the annals of extinction. Then, a bird-watching charter operating out of Whitianga encountered one. Initially, no one on that boat truly believed it. The photograph circulated among ornithologists nationwide, treated with the clandestine air of illicit goods. Alan Tennyson, fossil curator at Te Papa, the National Museum in Wellington, examined the images and remarked, half-jokingly, that they resembled the supposedly extinct New Zealand storm petrel. A profound silence descended upon the gathering, swiftly giving way to a heated debate. For if it was indeed the fabled bird, a perplexing question arose that nobody could answer. Where had it been for a century and a half? 11 months later, on November 17, 2003, 2 British birders, Bob Flood and Brian Thomas, were aboard another vessel in the Hauraki Gulf, north of Little Barrier Island, engaged in the pursuit of entirely different species. They managed to photograph and film a flock of somewhere between 10 and 20 of these same distinctive black and white birds. This time, the video evidence was unambiguous. The New Zealand storm petrel had never gone extinct. Not in 1900, not in 1950, not ever. It had simply eluded detection. This pivotal moment spurred Chris Gaskin, a self-taught seabird biologist who directs a small organization known as the Northern New Zealand Seabird Trust, to embark on a mission to locate the bird's breeding grounds. The question was vital because storm petrels lead a dual existence, embracing the open ocean as their dominion for only a portion of the year. They spend most of their lives skimming the vast expanses, fluttering just above the surface with their feet touching the water in a peculiar, moth-like gait that lends them their name. Yet, once annually, for a few brief weeks, they return to land to deposit a single egg within a burrow. The presence of a burrow implies a colony. A colony means a specific island. And a specific island is the singular location on Earth where the species' survival can genuinely be secured. Without a definitive nesting site, these birds remained elusive, spectral. It is impossible to safeguard a mere phantom. Thus, Gaskin, alongside Matt Rayner, a seabird biologist from Auckland Museum, initiated the meticulous search. They understood that the birds fed in the outer Hauraki Gulf. They knew the birds came ashore under the cover of night. What remained unknown was which of the numerous islands harbored their burrows. The most evident approach involved radio telemetry, capturing a bird at sea, affixing a minuscule transmitter to its back, and then tracking the signal to its terrestrial home. In late 2005, on the deck of a fishing boat near Little Barrier, they finally secured their first live New Zealand storm petrel, a fragile creature weighing 35 grams, roughly the same as a common house sparrow. In early 2006, they captured 4 more, releasing 3 of them with radio transmitters attached. The transmitters performed admirably at sea. Team members on other vessels successfully picked up the distinctive pings for weeks. Then, as the birds headed for shore, the signals vanished amidst the challenging rainforest terrain, rugged rock cliffs, and the overall intricate geography of an island indifferent to the limitations of an antenna. There was nothing. They attempted again the following season to no avail. The season after that yielded the same result. For 7 long years, teams from the Seabird Trust, Auckland Museum, and the Department of Conservation diligently caught birds, tagged them, tracked them out to sea, observed the signals fading as they approached some distant island, and then lost them entirely. The trust operated, in Gaskin's own words, on the barest of financial provisions. Grants were meager. Boats were often borrowed. One of the receivers deployed on Little Barrier during those demanding years was a testament to ingenuity and necessity. Fashioned from adhesive tape, sheets of aluminum, scrap metal offcuts, and repurposed components from a child's forgotten wooden projectile launcher. Then, in January 2013, everything changed. On the 23rd of that month, at sea in the outer Hauraki Gulf, the team accomplished a significant feat, capturing and radio tagging 24 storm petrels in a single day. Land-based teams strategically positioned automated solar-powered radio receivers on the Poor Knights Islands, on Burgess Island within the Mokohinau Group, and along the coast of Little Barrier Island itself. These receivers diligently scanned the air at night, listening for the unique pulse of a tagged bird returning to its burrow. Rough seas, however, delayed the Little Barrier team by several days. Finally, on February 6th, Rayner's party successfully landed on the island's north coast at a location known as Oruao Cove. They painstakingly hauled plastic fish bins laden with gear, fuel cans, and a generator up a challenging bush track to a makeshift driftwood lean-to, remnants of earlier expeditions. They established the receivers in a steep, mist-drenched valley called Parihaka-Okoa, situated on the western slope of Hoturu. And there, one night, the receiver captured it. A tagged bird, sitting motionless in a single spot for hours, neither flying nor moving, incubating. They pursued the signal on foot through the dense forest, guided by a handheld receiver. It led them to a narrow rock crevice nestled on a cliff ledge, tucked beneath a mature canopy, within soil enriched by centuries of leaf fall. Inside, they found a single burrow, and within that burrow, an egg. This was burrow number 1. Within days, they located 3 more. 4 nests in total, 3 adult birds ringed, 2 chicks banded. It was the first known breeding site of a species that scientists had officially dismissed as extinct in the 1800s. Chris Gaskin has since hailed it as nothing short of a miracle. The scientific paper documenting this momentous discovery, published in the esteemed journal IBIS in 2015, described it with more reserved language, calling it simply the first known breeding site for this species. Yet, merely finding the birds was only the beginning of the enigma, because Hoturu, or Little Barrier Island, should not have been able to conceal them. The island is a rugged volcanic cone, ascending 722 meters from the sea, approximately 80 kilometers northeast of Auckland. Since 1894, it has been a designated nature reserve. Rangers have resided there, meticulously monitoring it for over a century. Teams of ornithologists have thoroughly surveyed its forests for species like the kukauku, kakapo, and Cook's petrels. And still, nobody had ever heard the distinct call of a New Zealand storm petrel. Nobody had ever discovered a burrow in what is arguably the most closely supervised piece of native forest in the country. There is one crucial reason for this, and it lies at the counterintuitive core of the entire narrative. The New Zealand storm petrel almost certainly persisted on Hoturu throughout this entire period. It endured while predatory cats roamed the island for over 800 years. It survived while Pacific rats, introduced by Maori settlers centuries earlier, devoured the eggs and chicks of nearly every other burrowing seabird on the island. Feral cats were successfully eradicated from Hoturu in 1980, an undertaking that, at the time, was quite possibly the most costly pest management operation in New Zealand's history. The rats, however, held on until 2004, when the Department of Conservation strategically dispersed specialized control agents from helicopters across the island's entire 3,083 hectares. From that moment onward, Hoturu transformed into one of the world's rare, large forested islands entirely free of mammals. The storm petrels, clinging to existence somewhere in the rock crevices of the cliff ledges, began a slow but steady recovery. The 2013 discovery occurred less than 9 years after the rats were gone. Chris Gaskin has stated in subsequent interviews that it is almost a miracle the species did not vanish completely. The fact that nobody sighted a New Zealand storm petrel between 1895 and 2003 was not, he believes, because the birds were adept at hiding. It was because there were almost none of them left. His most informed estimation, shared by most of the involved researchers, is that when humans rediscovered them in 2003, there were only 200 or 300 adults remaining worldwide. That represents a population numbering fewer individuals than the typical enrollment of a local community school. The recovery, once the predators had been removed, proceeded rapidly by seabird standards. By 2014, the team had initiated a mark recapture study on Hoturu, catching birds at night using acoustic playback and powerful spotlights, and fitting each one with a set of distinctively colored leg bands. Between 2014 and 2018, they marked 415 individual New Zealand storm petrels. When these figures were processed through 2 independent population models, one based on land captures and the other on birds re-caught at sea, the estimates returned were 994 and 1,630 birds. The lower bound on these models suggests roughly 446 individuals, while the upper bound extends to over 3,700. Even at the lower end, this indicates at least a doubling of the population from what was almost certainly present in 2003. A species that had been reduced to a few hundred birds, hidden on a single mountain in a solitary gulf, is now numbered in the thousands. There is a vivid scene from one of the field nights on Hoturu that perfectly illustrates how this recovery unfolds. 6 researchers lay prone on their backs in the wet grass of a forest clearing, faces turned upwards, water trickling from their eyebrows. Above them, aimed directly into the night sky, gleamed that homemade floodlight of foil, adhesive tape, and repurposed wood. Its beam formed a broad white triangle, cutting through the mist, and swirling in and out of that beam were hundreds of pale bellies. Most of the birds bathed in the light were Cook's petrels, the most common seabird breeding on the island. But every 10 or 20 minutes, a different bird would cross the beam, smaller, swifter, with legs dangling, and someone would deftly raise a long-handled net, plucking it from the sky. The bird is measured, banded, weighed, photographed, and then released. A mere 35 grams, diminutive enough to rest comfortably within the hollow of one's palm, it then disappears back into the beam and away over the forest, towards a burrow that no human being will ever visit. The team returns the following night, and the night after that, for 10 consecutive nights. This is how a species returns from the brink of oblivion. Not with a satellite, not with a helicopter, not with a laboratory full of gene editors, but with 6 individuals lying on damp ground in the heart of a forest, holding a torch fashioned from scrap metal. The narrative holds one more unexpected twist, even for the researchers themselves. While the Hoturu population was being counted, expeditions in 2021 sighted New Zealand storm petrels at sea in the far north of the country, over 300 kilometers from Little Barrier Island. Such a distance is considered too vast, most seabird biologists agree, for a small storm petrel to be consistently feeding from a single colony on Hoturu. It strongly suggests, though it does not yet definitively prove, that a second breeding colony exists somewhere else, on some uncharted cliff, on an unnamed island within a country boasting 15,000 kilometers of coastline. Genetic samples from birds captured in both locations returned as identical, which could be evidence of either a highly mobile single colony or definitive proof of a second colony yet to be discovered. This means the search that commenced in 2003 is far from over. The New Zealand storm petrel remains, in some profound sense, a ghost. There are 415 of them bearing colored bands on Hoturu. There are field notebooks at Auckland Museum and Te Papa filled with precise measurements. There is a burgeoning scientific literature that has expanded from a single 2003 photograph to dozens of peer-reviewed papers, and there is still, somewhere out there, a remote precipice yet to be explored, concealing a burrow undisturbed by human presence, within which dwells a bird unseen by scientific eyes. For 150 years, the species existed only as 3 museum skins in Paris and London, 2 of them collected during a single voyage in 1827, one anonymously gifted in 1895, all of them mislabeled, misidentified, or classified merely as a plumage aberration of a common bird. Every ornithologist who examined them assumed they were relics of something gone forever. Every account referred to the bird in the past tense. Now, on a volcanic island in the Hauraki Gulf, chicks born in 2013 have matured, returned to their birthplace, mated, and produced chicks of their own. Those grandchicks are currently somewhere at sea, flying on legs that appear longer, their feet skimming the water in a run that resembles walking. In 2 or 3 years, they will return to the same cliff their grandparents came from. They will locate a burrow or excavate a new one beneath the roots of a Pahudakawa tree and lay a single egg, no larger than a human fingernail. And a small team of dedicated, weary scientists, armed with a torch crafted from scrap metal, will be waiting in the grass to weigh them and then release them. Nobody in 1895 could have possibly imagined that. Nobody in 1980 could have imagined it either. Extinction is not always what it appears to be. Sometimes, it is merely a species that has dwindled too significantly to be observed, patiently awaiting the removal of predators from its sanctuary. Sometimes, it is a coastline that nobody thought to explore. And sometimes, it is 108 years of profound silence, finally broken by 5 photographs captured from the deck of a tourist vessel. To delve deeper into such extraordinary narratives, consider subscribing to our channel.